It is 365 Sports College Countdown. I am Josh Neighbors. Alongside me, Jack Allen. We've got a whole lot to get to on today's show. We'll talk about John Calipari. I never know which one it is. Coach Cal had some comments about NIL, and I liked them because he had solutions. Finally, somebody in power with some solutions, not just problems. And then also we'll talk about what's to gain. Who's got the most to gain this week from a program standpoint in these college football playoff games, besides the obvious trip to the Final Four on the line. But what would it mean for these wins? Because I think it's a different question for a lot of these programs. So we'll have that. I want to thank the folks at DraftKings as well for sponsoring the show. Like the video, sub to the channel at CC Podcast JN, at Jack Allen TV. I'm at Josh Neighbors _. And then also you guys can find us wherever you get your podcast. Jack, been a minute, buddy. How are we? You went to the Xbox Bowl. How was that?
Hey, it was a fever dream. Let me tell you, you walk out on the field and there's Master Chief just kind of chilling on the sidelines, flipping the coin, handing out the trophy, which the trophy was pretty cool. I got to say, it was a normal trophy, but then they had one of those portable Xboxes kind of like built into it. That said, post-game, the Arkansas State players did somehow drop the console off of the trophy, and I watched a group of them kind of huddle around and like try to jam it back onto the trophy. I don't know. It was fun. It reminded me why we play bowl games. Teams that don't necessarily have national title aspirations still have something to play for. A lot of those guys got their last chance to make a statement, both as representatives of their program, and also you look at a kid like Jalen Rayner, the quarterback at A-State, and because there were two. You had Jacob Clark, who's the quarterback at Missouri State, who means so much to that program, who led them to a bowl game. He gets his last hurrah. Then you have Jalen Rayner, who's meant so much to A-State, gets his last hurrah because then he's entering the portal and finally cashing in, hopefully, on the money that he has definitely earned over the last 3 years. And so it was a really kind of like fulfilling situation for me to be able to be like, okay, this is why we do this. This is fun. It was, good integrated branding, all of that kind of stuff. They played it at the Star. It kind of stunk because the game was at 8:00. We weren't allowed to get into the stadium till after 6 because the Cowboys were practicing there that afternoon. And so, which was cool on one hand, and on the other hand, it's like, all right, what are we doing?
Yeah. I was telling you about the Pop-Tart Bowl, which I was watching. I didn't go, but it's like, timeout. Okay, coming out after this, it's Haynes King's final play, and like in the interim, like Strawberry and Cinnamon are going to hang out from on the field, which is fun. And I think we can have it all. I think that applies to a lot of college sports where it's like we can walk and chew gum. It doesn't always have to be one way or another. Like these bowl games can still matter. I want to see teams. I'm fine with 5-7 App State in the bowl game because their coaching staff wanted to go, which means there were enough guys in the team that wanted to go, and so that's fine. I want teams that want to be there, and have compelling games. And guess what? And this is the whole point of these anyway. What else would you watch on December 23rd at these times? These games are mostly television inventory. That's really what they function as, because Old Dominion versus Marshall in the Bahamas, it's better than what Sports Center reruns on ESPN News over and over again. That's the alternative. So, I think that we have to understand that this is not. They're not trying to create amazing matchups, but the Pop-Tarts Bowl, it's been a new deal. I forgot what bowl game it took over, but they obviously have put a lot of money into getting teams to want to show up, and the promotion's been really good, and the games have been compelling. So I think the Xbox Bowl, good example, Pop-Tarts Bowl, good example. And also, these for certain programs can be very meaningful games, because how much perception is reality, and the fact you only play 13 games. And man, most important one, last one, right? And nobody could be playing, right? And it couldn't matter, but the vibes are important.
Well, and talking to Missouri State fans at the Xbox Bowl, this is their first year in FBS. They're playing in a bowl game. Most of the fans that I talked to out there were like, pinch me. I can't believe this is real. Right. And it's just it reminds you hey, not everything has to matter for a national championship. Not everything that has never been the end goal of college football until maybe the last 5-10 years, before the whole point was, hey, we have this ambiguous championship that we might hand out that people will disagree on and bequeath to themselves 80 years from now.
Yes.
What matters is beating our regional rivals. What matters is, having these successful bowl game, endings to a season. And it's cool to see, programs and fan bases where that still does matter.
Yeah, it's all about things that matter. So if you haven't watched it, Coach Cal from Arkansas who like people hate, but like I liked him when I was at Missouri. I actually got to cover games with him. Like really just listen and also listen to what he says. I think these characters like Rick Pitino, Jim Calhoun, especially Jim Boeheim, like kind of the slimier side of college basketball, especially the Italian ones. As an Italian, kind of get this like Godfather rep. But he had about 7-minute rant last night about the NCAA, and everybody's doing that. The one thing I like Jack finally is that he had reasoned solutions. I did not agree with all of them. I actually most of it I probably didn't agree with, but I like the fact that he was presenting very like tangible things, like if a coach leaves, how many times you can transfer. Basketball a bit more particular, obviously with the draft, right, with the international players. But I thought he made a pretty good point about hey, we got to standardize the draft stuff, right? Because that is a part of your eligibility. Like the NCAA next week will review this player entered the draft then played here, right? So that stuff does actually matter. Just your general thoughts, and it's too long to show all of it, but go watch 7 minutes. It's worth your time. And I'm not saying you have to agree with what he's saying. I'm saying just take it in. And it's nice to hear an influential person, not just like listen to Nick Saban talk about what's wrong with college sports. And like, it's really easy for him to do because making a lot of money sitting on the desk and doesn't have to fix it. Right. And so Cal's like, here are solutions. I'm not throwing my hands up in the air. Here's some solutions.
Yeah, I do think, sometimes the solutions are not necessarily thought all the way out. I do think,
Right.
like you look at it, it's like I think people are really quick to jump on transfer restrictions and transfer limits. And it's like, that's already been tested in court and said that that's not legal. Right. And like, so it's like, as it stands right now, yes, there's a Trump quote, sounds good, doesn't work.
Yeah. Sounds good. Doesn't exactly.
And that's something that my wife and I say to each other a lot, but in this case, it's true. It's like, yeah, it sounds great. Sounds like, yeah, it would be great if we could just,
but there is somewhere in the middle that might,
but legally,
right, it's not gonna work.
It's just not going to work. And so I do think that, that is an area maybe of Cal's stance and Cal's rant that I don't necessarily agree with and don't think is functionally going to be able to work. Yeah. But I do think we look at the situation at Baylor right now, mid-season, adding a player who was, drafted by an NBA team. Within the rules, I guess it works. But as they stand right now, but I'm with Cal that if you remain in the draft after, if you remain in the draft, get drafted by a team, that should be the end of your clock. The question is, how do you compare that to like a Euro League? And so that's where the line is right now.
Here's the problem I had. I'm pulling this statement now. This is the big issue. And like the NCAA, I mean, once again, like the NCAA is not good, but also think about it like this, folks. Their main function is to put on the championships that are non-football, right? They run the tournament. They run the softball championship. And they do a good job of a lot of those things. Actually, it's one area where they do a good job of putting on other championships. This quote, Jack, was fascinating. I'm actually just going to share my screen. Talk about lay down and die and letting the dog, the tail wag the dog. This is them. Schools are recruiting and seeking eligibility for more individuals with more international, semi-pro, professional experience than ever before. And while the NCAA members have updated many rules following the House injunction, more rules must likely be updated to reflect the choices member schools are making. And the rest of it, it goes on more. But this last line, Jack, the rules need to reflect the choices the schools are making. Like the NFL's not like, well, these teams are going over the salary cap and we're going to bump the salary cap. I guess we're just not going to have a hard cap anymore. No, that is the tail wagging the dog. Like, you are the governing body. I know you're tired of getting your ass kicked in court, but like, are you just going to not? They've always hid behind the patina of that we are a governing body. Are you just giving up now? Like, are they saying uncle?
Well, I don't think that's what it's saying there. I don't think it's saying we give up. I think what it's saying there is.
Why would your changes reflect what schools are doing? It should be the other way around, right? Shouldn't schools be adjusting to the governing body?
Well, what I think it's saying is that, hey, we have these rules that are a little more broad, and schools are finding players that have unique situations that don't necessarily fit the cookie cutter of how these rules are written. And basically, because my understanding is that one big issue here is that a lot of the way that the rules are written for overseas players, like because of how the overseas system is set up, where it's not a high school, college,
Right.
you have
They're
kids who
getting
are
paid.
playing in professional systems when they're really young, like think soccer academies. The question is, do you want to limit that kid's ability to go to college because he grew up in a training program that's technically by US standards maybe professional, and so they have rules that are in place that say you can be a part of a professional organization just long as you're not paid beyond like room and board and basic expectations. And now people are applying that same thing to the G League and applying that same thing in US standards. And it's like, hey, these rules weren't necessarily written or for like 20-year-olds abroad who are actually playing professional basketball, who are still not being caught. Like the rules were not built for these type of players.
Yes.
And so it's like, while they do fit the rules the way they're written now, this was never the expectation, or this was
Right.
never how things were done. And so now we need to figure out how to change the rules to fit better the model of the player that we want to give eligibility to.
I also think having people like Cal is important part of the process, because the one thing about him is that you might think he's smarmy and slimy, whatever. His players love him. And like, I do genuinely believe him when he says, I like it might even be he said, I'm selfish during this thing, but like, it probably feels good for him to look at the success these kids have, like from where they were before. And, like a Adu Thero's guy's second, last year, second round pick by the Lakers, had his car stolen by Puka Nakua's brother, weirdly enough. But like, he's a borderline guy. But Cal told him, Arkansas could have used him this year, really good player. But he told him, man, like, you got the stuff, like the stuff you do well is good, but you need to work on your game NBA wise, and I'm not going to use you that way. Like, I want to use the stuff you do well. I'm not here to prepare you for the league. I'm here to win some games. And so he told him to go. And like, that's why players trust him. Because it's like, I actually do have your, and then he even talked about, hey, my son is going to be obviously grooming him to be a coach, wants him to have a set of rules there and whatnot. And so also, I thought it was funny. I saw Matt Painter had a quote where he's like, we want to know what the rules are so we can play within them. Like, no, you want to know they are so you can push them and see how far you can go. Like, don't lie to it now. And that's all a lot of the coaches want too. But I do think it's important to have a guy like Cal, because he is a coach, but who's made his entire living off of being invested in players. And I'll tell you what's funny, Jack. I thought about this the other day, just recently. Remember how the one and done was maligned? And it's like, these kids, just mercenaries. Honestly, like, the Cal relationship with these players is more wholesome than like Tulane, to Rhode Island, to Rutgers, to LaSalle. Like that, like, you don't see Cat going back to Kentucky. You see him calling Cal, and because that's the connection that mattered. It was those two that mattered. The people that matter. And so I think it's important that he might be a coach, but he's people oriented. Because I've been dubious of these coaches recently who are like, transfer dates, move them. Oh no, move it. No, other way. Like, it's like, we don't want to pay the kids. It's like, please pay them now, but like, just get it done. Most people are in it for them. I think he is legitimately in it for himself, but also like, he's good because he likes the people. And he's like, if I keep treating people well, the people will keep coming and play for me. And like, like, that's the thing about it. And I like having that. I mean, I always be right, but I like the idea of that person who's not just in it for them. He's in it for himself and other people.
Well, and it helps whenever you've built a reputation where the machine just is going to roll for you at this point. He joked about.
Well, he said to build that with his own personal equity, right? Like,
yeah. It's funny. He talked about how the current rules, they help the top percent, but a majority of these players aren't going to be playing professional basketball. And then he goes, except for my guys, a majority of my guys are professional basketball. No, it's and that is like one thing that I didn't necessarily love that Cal has said, and I don't remember if it was in last night's statement or if I'm conflating it with his statements earlier in the offseason. But he talked a lot about money and NIL, and he's like, I know what it's like to be poor, come into money, and then be poor again, and I don't want that. It's like, well, that's not your call.
Yeah.
Like, these players have the right and the ability. You shouldn't say they shouldn't make money just because they might lose it.
I hate that argument.
That's an argument.
Well, it's also very a lot of it's uncapitalist. Like, yeah. I'm not a big capitalism, like a capitalist guy, but like, isn't our country built off the idea? It's like, and like, also, in a perfect world, like these kids will make mistakes and they will lose money, and guess what? They'll learn. Like we all do when we screw up in life. Like,
and guess what's going to happen? They come in with $0 and they leave with $0. And you know what would happen if they came in and weren't able to be paid? They'd come in with $0 and they'd leave with $0. And they wouldn't have those lessons they've learned along the way.
I'm working out with 365 Sports, and they've been awesome to me. I love them very much. But I'm here now because I was working for another podcast, and I did something that I still felt like was the right call, but it got me. It cost me the show, and it cost me a lot of money. And so, like, in retrospect, although I have no personal or moral qualms about what I did, like I learned business wise would have been the better move. That's life. So like these kids should make mistakes. They should burn their cash. They should make a wrong decision. Because guess what we all did in college, Jack?
Made bad decisions.
Made a lot of stupid choices. A lot of dumb choices. But guess what? It shapes who you are. Like the Georgia logo, folks, does not shape who you are. The mistakes you make along the way, the friends we made along the way, as people say. That's really the point. Like I'm everybody can be different, but Jack, I'm a huge believer in that. Like the college is what you make it, no matter where it is. The weather might be cold, it might be warm, depending on where you go. But like the experience on the whole is what you make it, what you make out of it. And I think, to me, like they should make a situation where if kids just want to focus on football or whatever, fine. But like, how do we turn football into a life? Like, like some people take science classes. I take media classes. It's all different. It doesn't have to be like, I've got a big test today. Like, it doesn't need to be that way. People can make mistakes. People can also take classes you don't think are classes, but will help them down the road be on television. We can have it all. Like, we have the resources to have it all. The idea that we can't have it all is dumb, because I'm watching coaches get like, generational fortunes, like live tour money did not work. And, it's like, where are we going to get the cash to pay the players? Guys, there's enough money in the bandstand. We can have all of it. And also, it should be a work in progress. It's how things get better, right? Like, there is a way to walk and chew gum on all this stuff, Jack. I'm a huge believer in that.
Yeah, it's just we have to determine. I think the big question right now for the NCAA is, what are they going to determine professionalism is in the current landscape? Does
it matter what they determine it to be, though?
I do. I do think it does, because I do think the NCAA still has a certain level of like, we are an amateur league, and I think that they've gotten some, like the whole idea of there still being eligibility limits, period. Like the fact that those still exist and they have to be challenged, and there are legitimate challenges in court. And the excuses are always like, well, I didn't use real NCAA years, I used JUCO years and all that kind of stuff. Like,
it's good stuff.
Like it's but no one's really flinching on the idea that limits exist and they should exist.
Right.
And I think that because of that, the NCAA can still say, hey, this is a way that you push past your amateurism limit.
We'll hear from DraftKings, and then we'll stick on this just a little bit more, and then we'll talk about football in a second.
The stage is set. The college football playoffs are here. Every snap, every drive, every touchdown. DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook for live betting, puts you right at the center of the action. From real-time wagers to season-ending thrillers, DraftKings keeps you in the game from kickoff to the final whistle. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NEIGHBORS. That's code NEIGHBORS for new customers to turn $5 into $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours.
So I've been